This is episode 33 of Adventures in Supply Chain podcast. We are pleased to present the Data and Tech and Supply Chain video series with guest Anthony Clervi and host Marcia Williams. This episode is sponsored by USM Supply Chain. USM stands for Unstoppable, Scalable, Mindful Supply Chain. Check us out at usmsupplychain.com to scale up your profits together with your supply chain. Today we talk about how you can achieve cost reduction by working with a group purchasing organization, or GPO. If you are considering how to save cost from 7% to 12%, this episode is for you. The guest, Anthony Clervi, principal at UNA, is backing the vision for one of the fastest growing sourcing accelerators in the nation. Anthony is an experienced investor and entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of executing and providing value in the procurement and supply chain industry. In this episode, we talk about the following. What are the benefits of a group purchasing organization? What kinds of businesses should consider working with the GPO? For what kind of products and services? And more great points. And now with you, your host, Marcia, and her amazing guest, Anthony Clervi.
Good morning, Anthony. A pleasure to have you on the show.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Thanks, Marcia.
And today we are going to talk about a great topic that is very helpful, in particular for procurement. But before we start talking about this great topic, could you please provide an introduction about yourself? What is your story?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. So again, my name is Anthony Clervi. I run and lead an organization called UNA. We are I would say a boutique or unique group purchasing organization. And as far as my story, I fell into this, I think, which is not unique to probably a lot of your listeners. Although there are, I would say, a plethora of new education opportunities surrounding supply chain and procurement and sourcing. Being a part of this space was something that I didn't grow up and say to myself, this is what I wanted to do, although I do plan on never growing up. It's been a unique opportunity. So for the last 10 or so years, we have been striving to put together a portfolio and an organization that led with values that could really help organizations in the private business and some non-acute healthcare, and really drive cost savings that we believe is a unique and viable approach to an organization's overall procurement strategy. So we really lead with that. It's a blended strategy. We want to be a part under the umbrella. We know our place. And there are a handful of things that we've done over the last couple of years in specific categories, some of the negotiation or buying power. It's been a lot of fun. But again, I really fell into this prior to this. I played baseball. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I've got a couple of kids married. So we've got a lot of team members that are all different ages, all different backgrounds, and not didn't necessarily grow up in this space either. But it's been really fun to have a great team that leads with values, and we can't emphasize that enough. And I'll end with this whole theme, which I hope we can talk about, is in true empowerment. We say we want to empower sourcing heroes, and it's a fancy way of saying practitioner or the everyday sourcing professional or supply chain leader. And so we have this whole theme of empowerment. And so we think we fit that message pretty well. And I hope that's what we can talk about today and continue on. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, of course. And yes, you are right, Anthony. I think very few are those that they say, I want to be in procurement or in supply chain. I come from accounting.
Okay.
But yes. So here, what is critical, you were mentioning that your work in the company, your team, and you are working to deliver cost savings. That is a metric that is important, like before, during, and after the pandemic. So what is exactly that your company do, or what is group purchasing, and what are the benefits? Because we hear sometimes that word, and sometimes we don't know that that is an option. So
Right.
what is
What is
exactly
it? Why
that?
do I,
Yes.
do I need it? Right. What is it? Do I need it? What's all the hubbub?
Yes.
Ultimately, we help organizations, we'll just speak to private businesses of all shapes and sizes, buy better, buy smarter. We have billions and billions in leverage buying power with negotiated contracts from categories, everything from MRO to office supplies to technology to furniture when folks do get back in the office to everything from the floor to the ceiling. There are opportunities from a purchasing or SG&A or indirect spend that we have negotiated contracts with suppliers, and we call them supplier partners, that most organizations can't get on their own. So, and the beautiful thing is it's free to be a member of UNA. Most organizations, every GPO is a little bit different. Every might have their own niche. But ultimately we've negotiated contracts on behalf of our members or future members. We have the average savings is anywhere between, again, depending on category and baseline, anywhere between 7 and 8 to 15, sometimes 20%. And so ultimately the idea is, hey, you might have a lot of direct spend that's very obviously unique to your organization. What about all the indirect spend or tail spend or that kind of all gets thrown in? You don't have as much volume there. You don't have as much leverage. UNA as an organization can come in, take a look at your AP file, walk through that process, think if there's some strategic things we can do. And we try to keep everything really simplified. Start with the heavy hitters and, work your way down. And so from a simplicity and even practicality, what does that look like? Maybe you're already working with a current incumbent in a category you just don't have a lot of spend in. We can look at, do we already have a negotiated contract with that current incumbent, or should we look at some other competition or some players that might help? So in our model, we have single source for certain categories, but a lot of it is multi-source. So we give the member a lot of options. There's no fees tied to that. We bring in our strategy, we bring in our contracts, we try to come alongside you, understand what you're trying to do as an organization, and then help you execute. And once you're onboarded and you're a partner working with that supplier partner, we try to look at other categories. You work directly, you pay the supplier. What we really are is a facilitator, a strategic arm, an empowerment, a voice, and we can give you the data that supports you to make the best decision for your organization. But our asset and our main value is bringing in is that strategy and that know-how, how to really become an extension of your procurement team, know our place, which we talk about a lot, and try to help in areas that either you don't have the time, don't want to spend the time, or you don't have the volume, or you don't have the leverage, a myriad of reasons that we can be a great partner. And we look at it, it's a two-way street, but it's really a nice tripod, if you will. We want to make sure that, and I'll end with this and we can continue on, Marcia, that we're taking care of the supplier partner because we want to think long-term, whether that's the incumbent or a new party that we might bring in. And then of course, if we take care of them and then we make sure the organization has proper expectations and timeline, and if there is a change in behavior or product or service, ultimately as you know, procurement takes time. And then you have to, are there SOPs or is there a standard, or how are we enforcing compliance? Is there any compliance? So we try to look at all those things and lay it out and have set proper expectations, which I think is critical. And we just look at it as we take care of the supplier partner, we take care of our member. In the end, UNA should win. And it all sounds maybe a little bit too good to be true, but ultimately that's why the model is so great. It isn't too good to be true. There is real savings, there is real value. And a lot of the times we'll work with organizations and just look at 1 to 5 categories. Again, we talk about indirect spend or SG&A, real universal expenses. And so it's been a lot of fun. There's a ton of companies. We think there's a huge education gap of what is a GPO, why should I even work with them? And so maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but hopefully that's a high level. And I went into some of the weeds of some of the practicality of how we look at things in these conversations that we're in all the time.
Great. And Anthony, you talk about indirect. So it seems like the organizations, these organizations can help more to leverage indirect spend because there are different categories and well, we know that there are big players, so it's important to leverage volumes. Within indirect, are there any special categories to follow this model, to apply this model?
Indirect spend, what categories stand out that we serve or?
In general, to apply this model, for example, one can be MRO, as you mentioned, but maybe another one, I'm just like
sure,
the
let's
IT,
spitball here. MRO is great, IT is great. We've got a very unique packaging offering. It's very surprising, especially with COVID and the emphasis on packaging has really been highlighted. We've got a great partner out of Minnesota. I can say their name, Rapid Packaging. They've done a great job for us. They're a regional player. The big competitor in that is Uline. So all good parties. There's different strategies within packaging. There's a lot of unique use for food distributors and anybody doing e-commerce and distributor or manufacturers in general. That is a great category. We've got a unique contract in place there on negotiated spend. That's guaranteed, which is actually pretty unique, especially not knowing where people are starting and their current strategies or baseline, as I mentioned, but also down to basic things that these small things add up. We talked about kind of that tail spend or that junk drawer that we all have as consumers or homeowners or renters, if you will. That's what we kind of position tail spend and everything. What I'm getting at is shipping. We've got a great shipping contract, small parcel delivery, which is still still on the rise. It's changing. So there's some very unique contracts that are on the indirect side that you just don't think about, that you start to add them up and it's not strategic. It's very tactical and cumbersome for a sourcing hero to attack those categories. They usually, if it's less than a certain amount of spend, whether it's 10,000 annually or a couple 100,000 annually, it's probably not getting the attention. And that is the greatest opportunity for us to come in, partner, look at those. What do your $1 million or less, depending on how big the organization is. Everybody has different tiers. Let's take a look at that. And it's a great use of our time, but it might not be the greatest use for the sourcing hero in the organization. So we look at that as a complementing relationship. I mentioned some of those categories. And those are the conversations we're in every day. And a lot of it is, oh, wow, you can handle that. We don't have any strategic vision there. It's not a good use of our time, but can be a great opportunity, a great onboarding conversation for Una to come in, or less about Una and plug about Una, partnering with a good organization, a good group purchasing organization that understands your indirect spend and the value that can be not only from a cost saving standpoint, but from a time saving standpoint.
Yes, no, that's great. And you mentioned, Anthony, shipping. Are you talking about like the service, for example, a small parcel shipping that FedEx, UPS?
You got it. Yep, those are the big players. Yeah,
that's very
so a
interesting.
lot of things that you don't think about, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So that's a big player and can be a significant value for a lot of organizations. And so we drive a lot of value with I'll say the purple and brown guys. So.
Okay, no, that's great. So that service, because we had a recent episode on the podcast talking about last mile delivery.
Right.
Yes, so there's some services that you are offering and other companies, organizations are offering focus on purchasing, but also the 3PLs are offering that, right? So it's an area with some overlap. Great, but that is important to know that there are other options, and in shipping today, a lot of help is needed.
That's a nice way of putting it. I think ultimately what we find, you phrased it well, a lot of options. And so what we've tried to do in the market, Una, is make sure that we're sharing a story, a message that's enticing, but also creating opportunity and sharing that there are a lot of options. And so hopefully that's all we try to come in an organization and position ourselves in the market, is we want to bring more options to you as an organizations. We want to save you more time. We want to save you, of course, we want to drive costs out of the system. We want to empower you with your C-suite. And we talk about that in our resources page. Also, what can you do with that money? If you can save an organization $75,000, it goes beyond that. That's at somebody's seat. That could be another job. That could be another investment. That could be more profitability to the organization. What goes on beyond just the savings and the time? And then how do you get that message internally across? And we continue to try to do that. We want to drive that message home. We want to continue to create an opportunity that there are a lot of options, to use your language, and that we want to continue to educate the market that there is a viable place here, there's real value, and that the sourcing hero or heroes don't have to do it all alone. We see that a lot, that there's, somebody is placed in that seat, or multiple parties to cover a category or a myriad of categories, and there's no data, there's no compliance, there's an unrealistic timeline, and it's a very reactive approach. And so we try to empower and create a more proactive approach. Most of the time, though, when there is a mess, there's a lot of opportunity, which is great, but it can be very stressful, and try to create a success template. So people and organizations, sourcing heroes, are set up to win. And so we can't solve everything. We certainly don't have the most competitive contract in every category, but there are a handful of categories where we can do really well. And we try to direct all of our current members and future members to that. So transparency, integrity, surprise, that's critical. And just being very upfront and try to understand what the member or future member organization, what are their goals? That's one of my favorite questions. Like, what does success look like for you? I'm sure there's some very strategic categories that you need to handle, you're spending a lot of time on. What about the others? And then what would success look like there? So those are a lot of our conversations.
Great. And what are the companies or a type of businesses, like a particular industry or a particular size, that can benefit the most from this business model that is help like to leverage all the purchases of the members and get the savings?
So a lot of GPOs will service, there are Fortune 1000s using GPOs. We've got some very large clients as well, or as we say, members. So some different thresholds could be revenue, could be 100 million, under 100 million, or over 100 million. I mean, you can start to throw out some really big numbers. As the amount of employees, so anywhere between at least 500 to 5,000 is really a good niche that we service at Una. We certainly have plenty of members that have less than 500 employees. I will tell you what's changed a lot is this remote work, and how many of these organizations are actually going to come back to work. So we've tried to actually kind of stay away from employee size and revenue and how many locations. There's a myriad of variables that we look at, but anybody in the private business sector that has it's at least doing over, I'll say at a minimum threshold, $25 to $50 million. They've got, obviously decent payroll. They've got some real SG&A expenses, universal expenses that every business deals with. And so again, we're helping folks in categories where they may only be spending a couple $100,000. It doesn't have to just be in the millions. And so ultimately, as you start to see locations, employee size, and revenue of some of those specifics that I just shared, of course, you're going to see more of an impact on a bigger number. We're working with also very large, I'll say, car manufacturers right now. Can't use names, but they might be doing 4 or 5 million in uniform rental, or facility services, or janitorial services. And they're all back in the office, and they don't have compliance, but they have, it's not thousands, but hundreds of locations. And so there's an extraordinary opportunity, not only for Una to prove itself, but then for the organization to offload opportunity that's not strategic spend. Most in the organization of that size, in the billions, doing well over top line in billions, now you're starting to look at anything less than 50 million in spend or 25 million in spend. It's just not a good use of their time. They need to be looking at the direct spend side, how they're getting their product in, making sure it's not getting stuck in the Suez Canal, all those things. So.
Yes, right. And so there are different categories, different companies can benefit from this model. It is clear the benefit that the companies can get. So now I would like to understand how the companies offering this service of leveraging the spend and get savings, how are they compensated? Because they need to make a profit to stay in business.
So how are the supplier partners, or how does UNA win as an organization?
For example, UNA wins, right. and the suppliers, I understand more because, well, they with a larger volume, they can make profit. But how like UNA can make profit?
Our economic model is very simple. That's why we like to use language like supplier partners. We are actually compensated. Our economics are set and aligned with our supplier partners. And so ultimately, we try to target categories that make sense, that we know based on our portfolio, but also that's a win for our supplier partner, markets that they want to go after and serve. And ultimately, if we can bring in new opportunities for them, yes, at a lower cost, and bring in all of our tools, expertise, and knowledge, then it becomes a mutual win. But right, and then the model itself, if you go a little bit higher level, there's a lot of GPOs are in this space, mainly in healthcare, servicing through a myriad of economic models. Some will charge you to be a member for various reasons. Some will do kind of a gain share opportunity or a mix of both. Or others there's economics through the supplier. We like to put all the emphasis on the member. So I think, to use your language, there are a lot of options, and we try to create a message of empowerment, educate the market, specifically in private business. You start to talk, to go back to your specific question, your Fortune 1000, they're already doing a lot. We do service some clients in that space, but what about everybody else? That's not a Fortune 1000, Fortune 2000. And that's where we spend a majority of our time. And ultimately, it's free to be a member. Your average savings range is, again, it's like that 7 to 15, which, you start to add up, you get into the millions or even in the large six figures, for depending on the size of the organization in that specific category. That starts to add up. You start to save 5, 10, 15% on millions and millions and millions, sometimes 10 million plus or 8 figures in volume. Like we said, yes, that looks great for the bottom line, but what about the organization? What about that saves someone's job? That allows maybe that organization to pursue a new market. Maybe that makes that CEO actually believe in procurement. Like, what the hell are you guys doing? Wow, that's a real number. The CFO, or you get some top line involvement in some of those wins, and those are fun stories to be a part of. Not because of just the internal recognition, but what it means for the organization. So we try to think, what does it look like beyond just the savings? And there's real impact there, and we take a lot of pride in that.
Yes, of course. And what are the importance of data and technology in achieving those cost savings? Because with indirect, there's a lot of data, many transactions. So sometimes it is challenging to collect that indirect spend, in particular if they don't have any tools to do that.
Right. So we're actually in development of looking at different ways to allow our current members and future members to assess their data. We work very closely with our supplier partners to understand what data they have and get true transparency, so that the members and the supplier partners are both looking at the same information. Not only just the same information, but also the information that matters. More data for just the sake of more data is not helpful. But what we find a lot, and I mentioned it, is it's usually a mess when future members are coming to us. They don't have compliance. There's no standard operating procedure, and they're blind. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's either they haven't implemented proper ERP or SOP, or there has been no compliance and everybody's just kind of buying randomly, or insert X, nightmare scenario, if you will. I apologize. So what we've tried to do is we have a success template. We always use the saying, like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So we try to start in one category and we work through the basics of data of, all right, where do you understand where you are today from a data perspective? Do you have any? What compliance and SOPs do you have in place, and try to help encourage? We can't force anybody to do anything. Let's standardize this, and let's work with our supplier partners as well, because they've been successful either as folks that are already in the same market that you're serving. And so we can lean on a lot of them. And so a lot of the times and most of the sourcing heroes know this, but maybe they don't even have the time to lean on them. Maybe they don't have the time to hold them accountable in a category that doesn't make sense. And so we try to follow whatever success template that maybe that organization or sourcing heroes already have in place. But then we bring, I would say, a level of accountability to an area where there's opportunity, but it's not strategic, again, for the organization. So yes, data is critical. We know data is not necessarily the future. It's really now. It's the past if you're not have a handle on your data. But again, what kind of data? How does it relate to the organization? How does it help you reach success? What kind of accountability? We're talking about SG&A and volumes, again, that are not super strategic. Is that really the best use of time for that organization? No. And that's why you would work with an UNA organization like ours that is transparent, that has the right supplier partners, and can show you real savings, and can maintain that beyond beyond going to market or any kind of behavior changes. So hopefully that answers your question. There's a lot of high level in there, but there's nuance in it, as you know. It's not always just cut and dry, which can sometimes be great and also cumbersome. But again, where it's tricky and where it's messy, there's opportunity.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, Anthony, any final thoughts for the audience about this model, about the GPOs?
What I would say, Marcia, thank you. It's a wonderful question. Is just the spirit of education for procurement professionals, sourcing heroes, supply chain managers, what have you, is understanding that the group purchasing model is very much alive and well, but finding the right partner that is transparent, that has values, that sees beyond just the cost savings, that's already expected. But just knowing that it is available, and finding, if you can check us out at una.com, una.com/resources. We have a tremendous resource, I think, of talking about whether it be tail spend, or that we have a nice group purchasing guide that'll just walk you through it. There's no cost. Check it out. Our whole, again, on the theme of empowerment, is making sure that sourcing heroes know, like, we're not trying to replace anyone's job. And I think every GPO with any kind of integrity would say that. A lot of our issues that we run into are, again, I'll flip that and say opportunities, is making sure that our sourcing folks, the practitioners, realize we're there to empower, we're there to help. We're not there to replace. You need to go do the strategic things that have been given to you by your CPO or your C-suite, and let us help with some of these other things that are still going to bring additional value. So there's a complementary relationship there. There's an extraordinary opportunity for a GPO to come alongside and be a part, as I've stated, of the overall procurement strategy. Hopefully there is one in place. And we have a lot of tools and resources. Again, if you check us out at our site, una.com, to help. We're seeing the data and some of the surveys we've done and some of our partners, that tools and guides and information, which hopefully educates the market, has been very, very helpful. And again, we know our place. We think we can be and have been and will continue to be a great partner and resource for procurement teams, specifically in indirect spend, specifically in their SG&A, to use a more of an accounting term. I know you have the accounting background. And it's been a lot of fun. And so that's what I think about. There's you mentioned it before. I think that's great language. There are a lot more options than you may think. And we want to continue to do things like this, share the message, and hopefully people continue to understand how many options they have so they can go do their job better, and be more successful, and hopefully hire more folks and bring more profit to the organization and hit their key performance indicators. That's what gets me up every day.
Great, perfect, Anthony. So is your website the best way to reach you? Or
yeah, the best way to reach me personally is you can definitely go to the website. I do have a personal brand, anthonyclervi.com, where I'm just talking a lot more about leadership, a little bit about this space, the sourcing and procurement space. But again, Una, talking to our professionals, our sourcing advisors, or just grabbing stuff off our site as far as resources, una.com/resources. We've got some fun videos. Again, we've got some fun tools and kits and guides, playbooks, if you will. So I think that is the best place to reach us and to learn more about the space and how this could be a part of your overall strategy.
Perfect. And thank you so much again. It has been very helpful, and I'm sure now we are aware. We are better.
That's right.
Because we know that
awareness.
exists.
That's right. The power exists. It's real. So.
Exactly. And with those savings, right? You mentioned 7% up to 15%.
Right. That's a good average. Yep.
Yes.
Real dollars, and there's real impact to that. That's beyond just the money and time. So I know you get that. It's been a pleasure, Marcia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you so much.